Hey guys, Kiwi here. In this video, I'll be breaking down and analyzing the newest issue of The Walking Dead comics, issue 175, New World Order Part 1. Major warning and spoilers for everything in the comics up to this point, as there are quite a few major plot progressions for the introduction of this new story arc, along with a crazy shocking moment at the end that I just personally loved. With all that being said, let's just jump right into this. So this entire issue is completely about our group's initial meeting with the so-called Stormtroopers of the Commonwealth, and I'm very glad with how they spent their time this issue. It seems to flow naturally. I loved the dialogue along with the way that they went about explaining this new group to the readers. We'll get more into that as we jump further into the issue. We start out with the princess actually making some snarky comments about the armor that the Commonwealth soldiers wear, and I definitely got some Negan vibes here. I swear, Negan and the princess would just get along great. It seems as if they have the same type of humor, you know? But anyways, a suspicion soon arises when Stephanie isn't physically there to greet Eugene when they're confronted. A man off panel is shown talking behind the Commonwealth soldiers, and he is revealed to be Lance Hornsby, who handles all the entries into the Commonwealth. He introduces himself in a train car that he calls the staging area, and he begins asking questions. Eugene is very incompliant, as he seems obviously angry that he is speaking to this random Lance guy and not Stephanie. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when Rick and Eugene proposed this meeting with Stephanie's people a few issues ago, I don't specifically recall them stating that Stephanie had to be there. Of course, Eugene probably thought it was implied, considering their whole trust thing, but Stephanie probably wasn't as high up in the Commonwealth hierarchy as Eugene thinks. Eugene is one of Rick's closest friends, so Rick trusts him enough to let Eugene go off on his own with a few people in order to tackle this. Stephanie, on the other hand, could have just been some person put in the tech department of the Commonwealth, probably in a room with a bunch of electronics, including a radio. We don't know much about her, so for all we know, she could have been sneaking into the radio room to talk to Eugene. As we find out near the end of the issue, the Commonwealth is literally home to apparently 50,000 people, which is far larger than anything I could have ever imagined. Stephanie originally stated that their group was over 50 people, but we now know that it is apparently over 50,000. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves, so let's jump back to kind of the beginning of the issue, as Lance doesn't take too nicely to Eugene's impatient and rude attitude, causing him to understandably not trust Eugene as much as we all know that he can. Now, he tells his men to search the area to make sure that Eugene doesn't have any extra hidden friends out there, as he also states that they will wait until the soldiers get back. Now, what makes this confrontation so interesting to me is that our group of main good characters aren't perceived as the most reasonable side. Lance gave them an entire introduction about how Lance enjoys meeting new people, along with stating many times that he doesn't want to have to kill them and that he wants to work with them. Knowing that the Commonwealth is like 50,000 people and Lance is the person in charge of letting newcomers in, I can only imagine how many goddamn times Lance has probably ran through this drill, causing it to pretty much become his post-apocalyptic job. Just imagine Aaron and Eric's job scouting for new people way back when they first introduced Rick to Alexandria, but pretty much that job on steroids. Now, Eugene obviously didn't give off the best first impression, but Michonne slowly starts turning that around. Although she states that she does stand behind Eugene's stubbornness and annoyed behavior, Lance compliments that, stating how it's a very good thing that they stand united. Michonne states that they don't want to have those guns pointed at them for longer than they have to, so that they should just get through all of the questions as quickly as possible. So as Lance goes through all of his generic informational questions, such as names, days traveled on the road, etc., he also asks if their group has picked up any unusual customs along the way in order to survive in the apocalypse. Michonne says no, but Lance responds with skepticism as he elaborates by giving an example. He says that they recently came across a man who covered himself in blood every day, and what Lance actually says here reminds me of Nick from Season 2 of Fear the Walking Dead, as strange as that is, but Nick is always just covered in blood, wandering around with zombie herds like some sort of whispers, so kinda reminded me like that, but I digress. Anyways, the soldiers come back saying that they found nothing but 5 horses, to which Lance asks why only 5 horses when there are 6 people. The princess explains that she's a newbie and that they barely know her. Now, this seems to kinda irritate Lance, as he says that he wished that he knew that earlier, explaining that just because they trust new people doesn't mean that he does as well. He states that he'll have to take her aside later and do an assessment, so will we see some more character backstory for the princess as she discusses things with Lance in a possible future issue? Lance states that he feels comfortable enough to bring them back to the community with him, but Eugene denies this once more as he brings up Stephanie again. Lance grudgingly states that the place he wants to take them is where Stephanie is anyways, so it's a win-win for both of them. I enjoyed this entire staging protocol that Lance seems to have. It's very routine, and I feel like we'll look back on this introduction to Lance as a pivotal moment of a series game changer in the show, just like when Jesus came to Rick and originally told him that his world was going to get a whole lot larger when we were very first introduced to the hilltop. This new world storyline is like a larger world on crack. I expect big things from the comics in 2018, and it's honestly what I'm probably most excited for out of all the Walking Dead content coming out this year. That means the 2 shows, the video game, and everything else, man. I'm just more excited with the comics and just everything about this new storyline. I feel like it has a lot of potential, and I really hope it doesn't let me down. So as all the Commonwealth stormtroopers escort our group back to the Commonwealth, they get jumped by a group of zombies at nighttime while Lance is sleeping in the front of the carriage. Now right before they get attacked, one of the soldiers starts talking to Michonne, telling her that he's been a part of the Commonwealth for 2 years now, and that it's great once you get how it all works. He mentions how he's only been there a couple years, as if it's not a long time, and that would put us around the time of the time skip after All Out War. This implies that the community was created long before this man ever arrived, so it was probably something that started from the beginning that actually worked. Is it government orientated, or have they just scavenged all of that gear? Now, throughout this entire zombie ambush, I really enjoyed the use of exposition here. We just get to see how professional these soldiers really are as they use callouts such as full stop, among other things. They call out locations of zombies along with how many, and they also have different stages of defense. At first they say, blades over bullets, let's try to not wake the baby, move in. This implies that they want to move silently to take out as many zombies as they can without drawing more attention to themselves and therefore more zombies. I may have just found this line funny, but it also adds a little bit of comedic effect, as stating try to not wake the baby could also be suggested towards Lance, as the next panel directly under this shows a soldier trying to nudge him awake as he's still fast asleep. Now we see multiple soldiers stab at a few zombies, but eventually one yells, "Red alert, it's a swarm." I always enjoy different fighting tactics and formations for standing off against a horde of zombies, so I hope that these callouts stick with us. Not to say that it should get overused or dull or anything, but I hope that we see these callouts as a sort of universal language that just all of the Commonwealth soldiers follow and obey. Further exposition is shown as we see soldiers bickering about whether or not this is the magenta swarm, implying that they keep tabs on big zombie hordes along with their migration patterns. Just like Rick's system between the joined communities at Alexandria, the Commonwealth seems to have a systematic strategy involving scouts in order to keep the community safe from hordes, or swarms as they call it apparently. Now as Lance finally wakes the hell up, Eugene and Michonne wonder whether or not they should be worried. Michonne states that they seem to be handling things, so they should just decide to wait it out, and Lance notices that. As the soldiers are mowing down the swarm, Lance turns around to comment on how Michonne and the group aren't panicking or asking for their weapons back, and that he'll be taking note of their nerves of steel. This just made me imagine of other recruitments that Lance has probably done, where they may have been attacked by zombies on the way back, causing newcomers to freak out and demand their weapons back. I'm sure that Lance will like our characters once he gets to know them, so hopefully him, among other new characters we meet at the Commonwealth, will quickly fall under our side, as we could really use some people to back us up in this huge community. Credibility always goes far in the apocalypse, but it's also very hard to come by. So one of the soldiers mentions that the rest of them will have an easier time taking out the horde, not having to worry about protecting our group, so Lance decides to head onwards as he waves goodbye to his men gunning down zombies in the middle of the night. Michonne looks back at one of the soldiers as she seems unsure if they'll be able to handle the job, but Lance doesn't seem to have an issue worrying whatsoever. Now, I loved how this scene gave us some good zombie action for the issue, so it wasn't just all talking, and they used this swarm attack to actually further explain the methods of the Commonwealth soldiers. So, the next page is a short time skip to morning, and they've actually pretty much arrived at the community. Michonne notices the stadium just like I did, and she asks Lance if that's where they've secured and built a community inside. Now, as a side note, apparently there is literally a community that's doing this in Season 4 of Fear the Walking Dead, but Lance quickly shoots down that theory as he says that the stadium is simply used for concerts and football games. Sadiq and the princess start getting all hyped about concerts and sports, leading Lance to explain further that they have multiple sports leagues such as baseball, basketball, and soccer. Magna finally straight up asks how many people they have, and Lance confidently responds, in all of the Commonwealth, almost 50,000. The next panel shows him with a giant grin on his face as the rest of our main characters behind him look shocked as fuck, and so we'll just have to wait and see how this may or may not be a complete change to the overall look at The Walking Dead. Is Lance bluffing, or is he really telling the truth? How huge is his Commonwealth? He doesn't really have any reason to lie, right? They seem like serious business, so I'm going to take his word for it, but we'll just have to wait and see. 50,000 survivors means 50,000 potential red shirts, enemies, or even main characters. Although I thought that the cast fattened when we were introduced to a larger world, oh boy, do we have an entirely new world to explore. I used to think that just simply finding another community like the Hilltop or the Kingdom was crazy, but 50,000 people? Are you kidding me? Alright, but I wonder how many of those you've recruited yourself there, Lance. Anyways, as they arrive at the community, Eugene notices a huge wall of the lost. Lance starts explaining that people who were separated from their loved ones posted up photos to hold out hope of them someday returning, but Lance chalks it up as a pipe dream. Although he states that there have been a few reunions back in the day, he also goes on to say that it's pretty much pointless now after all these years. As everyone takes a large portion of time to inspect this wall and give their reactions as to how tragic it all truly is, I started suspecting that something was up and that maybe we'd have a character see someone that they know, or we'd maybe even see a character from back home at Alexandria. As the comics lead up to the shocking moment, I was completely caught off guard as I saw the next page and instantly realized that one of Michonne's children were still alive. This is crazy awesome and I love it. In hindsight, it all makes perfect sense, and this just made Michonne's backstory so much better. This really felt like a payoff in my eyes, and we haven't even seen the full fate of Michonne's potential reunion. Remember, we don't even know if the daughter is still alive or not. We just know that she was alive at some point post-apocalypse and that she got to the Commonwealth and put Michonne's photo on this wall. Now, when we originally learned about Michonne's backstory, along with her side story during the time skip in the comics, where Telltale devoted an entire video game pretty much based off of just her suicidal thoughts that haunted her due to never having closure with her daughters. I'll need to run through the game to refresh my memory so I can fully explain this all in a future video, but I remember Michonne having multiple nightmare segments where her daughters are either begging her to protect them or they're saying things to guilt trip her such as, "Where are you?" or "Why couldn't you save us?" But then from what I recall, there was never much of a solution in the game. She found Sadiq, they had a few crazy boat adventures, and Michonne ended up reconnecting back into the comics as kind of a pirate fisherman with Oceanside. It all kind of seemed like a pointless story arc to promote a video game, but now it is actually coming back full circle as we finally get some sort of resolution to it. I love how they did this right when you expected it the least, right when you just about pretty much completely forgot about it. It's just like how they let the question of who got Rosita pregnant simmer for the entirety of the Whisper War until afterwards when most of us forgot about it and Sadiq comes out of nowhere and says that he was the guy. They planted this seed with Michonne's backstory back around issue 127 with the new beginning, and it is just now issue 175 that we're getting this reveal. This is quite the Hodor reveal moment for Robert Kirkman, if I do say so myself, for those of you who have seen Game of Thrones and understand what I mean. Now, for those of you wanting more speculation and discussion on this shocking moment with Michonne, you're in luck. I'm actually planning on having one of my future videos be a full breakdown, explanation, and prediction video as I discuss Michonne's backstory and future story arc in full, but I just had to give my initial reactions at the end of this video as well. It's an excellent point to end off on, and I hope that we don't have to wait too long to get a reveal. I know that we still have to get fully introduced to the Commonwealth still, including its leaders along with Stephanie to make Eugene here happy, but I'm just so intrigued by this Michonne reveal that I just keep itching for more Walking Dead comic. So good job Kirkman keeping me sitting at the end of my seat after 175 issues. I just hope that the rest of New World Order is just as exciting. I'd appreciate a like on the video if you've enjoyed anything I've said today, or even subscribe for more breakdowns involving the Walking Dead comics in the near future. If you'd like to take that extra step in helping support my videos, consider checking out my Patreon where there's a bunch of different rewards involving the channel, such as a chance to directly influence the videos being produced. The Patreon has been set up and running for a while now, and once we really get some traction behind it, I'll hopefully be able to create a bunch of extra content for you guys, including the comics, the show, and the video games, but let me know what you guys want. Now, all of that isn't necessary by any means, but it could really help in the long run, especially with all the adpocalypse stuff going on right now. But as always, I thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.